What's happening, everybody? And welcome to SpeekyGeeky. As always, I am your host, Mr. Geeky. Today's episode is extra super duper special because I have been assured that we'll get to see some brand new official Super 7 Ultimates reveals one whole week before they actually come out. This is sure to be an enormous show, so buckle up as I introduce our very special guest, Super 7's very own TMNT brand manager, Kyle Wlodyga. Wlodyga. Give me a second. I know I can get this right. Just 1 second.
Actually, that guy is in the other room. Let me go get him for you.
I don't think he's coming back. Without further ado, I would like to reintroduce our very special guest, Super 7's very own Kyle Wlodyga.
There you go.
Thanks for being here, Kyle.
Yeah. Just so no one thinks I'm like a total jerk, like that is not real. That was all fake. I didn't actually leave. I don't care. I've heard way worse.
Kyle went along. I told him my whole master plan on this, and he was very accommodating. So thank you on that, Kyle. He's very nice.
Always happy to have fun at my own expense.
Well, I wanna first start by saying we're thrilled to have you on the show. I know that there's a lot of new things that have been shown recently that I may have alluded to just a moment ago that definitely are going to get into. But before we jump into the turtles and before we jump into the toy fair, I want to just kind of, for anybody who is just getting into toys, who may not know what Super 7 is or who you are, which is, I realize many of our fans already are very well versed, but if you want to just give us a very quick who you are, what you do, what kind of awesome stuff that your company does.
Yeah, well, I'm Kyle Wlodyga, like we talked about. I'm a product designer at Super 7. I've been there a little bit over 3 years now. I've had the privilege of being able to work on some really, really great brands like Turtles and Power Rangers. And when I first started, I even got to work on some He-Man stuff towards the end of our deal with them. I worked on Thundercats, and I'm working on some upcoming stuff like Toho and a lot of other things. I think a lot of people probably know how much I love heavy metal music, and specifically Ghost. I mean, you can see Papa back here. So I'm very, very fortunate to be able to work on those figures, design toys every day, and work on brands that I love. Super 7 is, pop culture action figure toy collectibles brand. It's been around for more than 20 years now. It started as a print magazine that just talked about Japanese final toys, Sofubi. It's a term that you guys might be familiar with, and it spiraled from there to making our own toys and working with Alien licenses, and eventually working with Funko and getting more and more pop culture brands that people love, and eventually Reactions, which I think most people know us for, and then Deluxe and Ultimates and Super Shoguns and just Super Cyborgs and just everything cool under the sun belongs to Super 7.
Heck yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your toy collecting experience when you were a kid?
Sure.
Like, who was in it? Who were your essentials? Were you a completist? And like, what lines did you collect?
It's hard to be a completist when you're a kid and you have I think my allowance was $4 a week. $1 had to go into savings and $1 had to go to charity. So I'm already down 50% on that. So I think, it took me like 2.5 years to save up for a Nintendo 64 back in the day, which was a big deal. Toy wise though, I was really into, I had a lot of the Power Ranger stuff. I had like the flip heads. So I had that full team. So I guess I got lucky enough to complete that there. But like the biggest toy line for me was Gargoyles back in the day. I was complete on that because my parents knew. I didn't have the castle, so not 100% complete, but I had all the figures. I had everything. And then I was really, really big on Godzilla as a kid, right around the time when I was peak toy age, 6, 7, 8 years old. It's when the Trendmasters Godzilla figures were landing. Those big 10-inch things that were like 16 inches long and they had extra tails and they screamed when you turned them on. And oh, they're great. I have them. I have all of mine up here still. Actually, I can't see them, but Godzilla and gargoyles, which not a lot's changed, I guess.
And it's funny too. I mean, so much of that stuff comes back now. Also, it's all wonderful to begin with. So that's not hard to understand why that would be, but it's like, big chunky, big figures that are just,
I'm excited that gargoyles are making a comeback, but at least for me, Godzilla is an evergreen brand. Like, it's never gone away.
Were you ever into the comic series? Yeah.
Comic series is what started me on it. My grandfather, way back when, used to buy me the Dark Horse Godzilla comics. And I remember is it Art Adams, all those old covers that he did back then. I remember there's one, I think the first issue, it's like Godzilla, the cover, it's like Godzilla and he's in the water and his like nose is bleeding, like he's going through like a fight and stuff. And that always stuck with me. He would give me those comics because he knew I liked Godzilla, and I would copy all of those. And that's just how I started like really drawing a lot. So I blame Godzilla for this career that I have.
Did you have a like a white whale kind of character, as an adult, right? That you think back towards your childhood and you're like, oh, that's one that I wish I would have had.
Wish I would have had. Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, White Ranger was like the big bad awesome dude. I never had the Saba. I never had the role play Saba as a kid.
Yeah,
because like my parents thought it was too violent, so I actually wasn't allowed to watch the show. But they would buy the toys for me, but they refused to buy like a role play sword because they thought I would just decapitate my brother or something.
Well, and rightfully so. I have siblings too. I know what that is. You're looking for that angle.
No, and they've since apologized to me, because I think I said, I was like, I get to work on Power Rangers now. I'm gonna make the toys that you never let me buy or whatever. And they were like, who are you? Yeah, so that Saba is always one that stuck with me. Yeah, the castle playset for gargoyles.
Do you have modern essentials in terms of who's in your current line?
Obviously, I'm all in for the NECA gargoyles. I think they're great. I love them. It's like I almost always have some kind of Mythic Legion coming in lately, just because I love them. They're so fun. Obviously, the Super7's Ultimates, like I have to have all the heavy metal ones, but that's like a little bit like high on my own supply, right? And then I started getting back into like Godzilla in a big bad way, so I'm starting to get some like SH Monster arts, and I'm slowly getting into some Sofubi stuff as well. And probably the thing that I'm like the most like complete on, I guess, is like all of Mezco's DC stuff. Just because, at least for me, like it's the best version of like DC characters in that scale so far.
Yeah, I saw that recent one with like Two-Face, where it's got the flip in action. I was like,
yeah, the first one has that. The black and red one has that too.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, so it's it's reuse, which is fine. But it's like you want your Two-Face to flip, and Two-Face is always is one of my. I think he is probably my favorite Batman villain, so that was an instant pre-order.
Half of me wants to buy it right away, and the other half,
yeah, exactly. Gotta flip a coin.
Yeah. Okay. If you had 5 figures that you have worked on, either this is gonna be tricky because I realize there's probably some that haven't been announced that you have worked on also. What would be your top 5 that you've worked on?
Okay.
If you can't say, then just blink twice.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely one of them that's not out yet, for sure. So I'm not going to tell you about that, but you'll see it soon. Obviously, the Papa Emeritus, the first one. It's like kind of the reason I like decided to take the job at Super 7, because when I was interviewing, which was my interview was at Designer Con with Flynn, and we were just talking back and forth, and I was wearing like a Ghost shirt, and I was like, what you guys should be doing is making Ghost figures, and he was there with Josh, and they kind of like side-eyed each other and like, we already are. And I was like, oh, can I see it? And they're like, yeah, sure. And so he like showed it to me on his phone, and like without even like thinking about it, I like started correcting it. I was like, well, that's wrong, and look, this hat looks dumb, and blah blah blah. And they were like, yeah, cool, dude, thanks. And they like put their phone away. And the interview was over, and I was walking around, I was like, I probably just bombed that because I like critiqued their figure, but turns out that they liked it because there was, they didn't at the time. I guess there wasn't anybody as like passionate about the brand as I was. So, and it was a big deal to start at Super 7 because I was gonna have to move because I was in SoCal and they were in NorCal, and them having the Ghost license and working on all these other brands that I loved, I was like, where am I gonna have an opportunity to like work on Ghost stuff, which is like my favorite band ever? Like I have to do it. So that one particularly is like really special because it's like almost like the culmination of everything that I worked on and strive for and struggled through to like make, like move up there, start this new life, do this new job, all that stuff. So that one's always like probably going to be number one for a long time, I think.
Did the success of the Ghost line influence some of the expansion with the music stuff that they kind of moved into over the years here?
Definitely. Yeah.
Because that's incredibly fun to see how big that's getting.
Yeah, it actually started with the success of the King Diamond stuff.
Oh,
we didn't expect that to blow up like it did, and they're like, oh well, let's see what else we can do. And then it was like, I think wave one of heavy metal was like Ghost, Motorhead, and like Megadeth all at once or something like that. And then that went bonkers, and then now like cut to here we are now making like Descendants figures. Nobody thought we'd make, right?
Oh, but it's great. I mean, I love that this is like getting to a place where there is stuff there where it's like you get these deep cuts. It's able to touch into a lot of fans. People have their favorites, and they may not think that everyone else has those favorites until you're like, oh shoot, that toy, and you realize there's a whole lot of other fans that are equally into that,
Exactly right.
So it's community building.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the figures, I'm actually really, really proud of the Guerilla Gorilla, even though the internet's confused by it. I'm really, really proud of that one. And then I was able to work on Snake Mountain, which was like the first playset that I ever worked on, which was crazy. And that's just like such an irresponsible amount of plastic for one thing. It's cool to be part of that, and same with the party wagon.
To me, I feel like when it comes to toys, there is not such a thing as irresponsible use. You know what I'm saying? Because
I know that's probably the wrong word. When a figure is like so big, that's usually the joke I make.
Oh, it's
this thing's putting holes in the ozone.
It's bringing a whole lot of love. It's bringing a whole lot of imagination to the table. That was a fun one. I mean, the Snake Mountain was how many decades worth of waiting on something that gorgeous.
Yeah. So I mean, it was mostly done when I started, but I was able to like go to China, look at the tooling models, like work on like make notes on the test shots, do the QC stuff, like improve the trapdoor mechanism, like stuff like that. Some like real like nitty gritty like toy design stuff, and it was like cool to be able to like cut my teeth on that.
So hypothetically, if you could get your hands on 3 properties, hypothetical, we're not saying that anyone is doing this, but for you to get to play with. And get to play in that sandbox, what lines would you want to get, and who would be the first character in those lines that you make?
Well, I mean, I don't want to give away the farm too much, of course. I'll just leave with like one, just because it's like my favorite one. More than anything, I want to make Metalocalypse figures. I want to make Metalocalypse so bad, and I would start that line with, there's so many good characters from that. If it's Metalocalypse Ultimates, you probably do Dr. Roxo in wave one, and he comes with like a floating face bones thing with like a stand, right? Maybe a murder face in there as well. I think there's so much potential in that, and surprising no one, the metal guy wants to make Metalocalypse toys, but yeah, that's for me, that's like my dream right now.
That'd be a really fun line too. Yeah, there's a wealth of characters in that to kind of just dig nice and deep into that. It's like,
and the from a costing perspective, the project managers would love it because it's just a bunch of dudes in black t-shirts with just new heads, right? Right. Very, very easy to do.
So going into what you were saying just a moment ago here about Guerilla Gorilla, because that's where I was going to go next. Was
I figured
that is huge, and not only
literally,
right? It's an enormous figure.
He's like this big.
Oh, I love it.
He's huge.
It reminds me of like the Pit. You remember there's like a Pit figure that came out years ago. It just has that massive-ness to it.
It's not as like that, because that thing is like, that one is irresponsible. That thing is like actually massive. It is like, it's probably the most plastic we've put into any TMNT figure. It's not as big as like Monstar, right? But like it's got all of those accessories. He's like this, again, he's a murder weapon. You could chuck him and hurt somebody. Just to put it in perspective, like I would need to like double check it, but I'm like 90% certain that the bazooka he comes with is taller than the turtles.
I looked at that and it seemed huge.
Yeah, it's gorilla sized.
When I saw it, my first reaction to it was very different than what others' initial reaction to it was. And I realized in that moment my background knowledge on some of these things is a little different. So people have been asking a lot, why Guerilla Gorilla over Sgt. Bananas? I understand for a couple of reasons, but I want to get your clarity on it.
Yeah, obviously we all love Sgt. Bananas, but at the same time, like we're 7 waves in, right? If you don't innovate, you die a little bit. So for that, like, yeah, we obviously want to make Sgt. Bananas. I love Sgt. Bananas. Our photographer, Johnny, who everybody knows as Sgt. Bananas on Instagram, loves Sgt. Bananas. And we were like, okay, but like, what if we made this guy who's like Sgt. Bananas, but like it expands the roster and like the prop and like the directions we could go with the line. And it throws a curveball and it gets people interested again, whether it's positive or negative. Like they're still talking about it ultimately. And it's not like, we're not so like vain. It's just like press at any cost. It's just like, we're trying to just do something different and keep the line fresh, especially this late. Wave 7. At this point, if it was so formulaic, like, and we started doing what people expected, like, yeah, you'd please a lot of people, but like, I think there's a silent section of the community who would also start to get bored and not interested anymore.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like a couple things, right? One is that it's definitely getting people talking, and it's getting them a little bit more informed in terms of who this character is, which is also really cool. And, I think people are missing kind of the bigger part to this too, potentially. Well, 2 things, right? One is that I'm not hearing you saying that Sgt. Bananas is not possible, right? So that's very possible that could be coming down the road, and it's now a lot of the tooling's been done there. So it's maybe more realistic, right? But also that this is, partially a concept character. It was in the TMNT magazine, but I'm looking at this and I'm looking at, the Aaron McCarthy, Ace Duck, Quack Up Head. Is this kind of indicating that there might be some more concept characters we might be seeing from the line too?
I mean, maybe not entirely characters, but if we can pull references like the Errol McCarthy head, or like, he was originally called Guerilla Gorilla, like so much as that his name tag says it, right? Like if we can pull stuff like that into like the main characters and like just set ourselves apart from that vintage toy. Like I know a lot of people like feel like the expectation is like, this is just the exact vintage toy and it's got new joints and it's bigger and it's painted better. Like that's cool, but we also want to be able to create a point of difference from that vintage line and really, ultimatize it, right? It's not, call it Ultimates for nothing. You want to add stuff that makes sense for the character and really just give you everything all at once. So like with Ace Duck, like I saw that head and I was like, smoking a cigar? Like, hell yeah, we're gonna put that in there. Like right. And it's like, okay, so he's like a movie star or whatever from like the 40s, like that they watch. Like, what did those guys use back then? Tommy guns. Like that makes sense. And so it's stuff like that just kind of rolls downhill from there. Just it becomes the cool beast that it becomes. Guerilla Gorilla was a little bit harder just because like I did pull inspiration from Sgt. Bananas, obviously, but it was actually probably the most fun. And I think I'm the most proud of him because like we were able to just like design a whole character that never had a toy before and like contribute to that, almost like that turtle canon a little bit more, like flesh out what this guy is. So
absolutely. I mean, that was my initial thought when I saw that, as you're expanding into what we are coming to know what this line is, and it's throwing a monkey wrench as it is, into the mix here, where it's kind of subverting the expectations a little bit in an exciting way, because part of that fun and part of that experience of toy collecting is not knowing everything. It's having the speculating and having those conversations with others who enjoy the passions that we enjoy. But I'm certain for many this came out of left field, and which is great.
Definitely. I sort of view it kind of like music and like heavy metal artists and stuff. Like I know like there's been a few bands that I like when like they'll start changing the style, or how David Bowie would go from different styles each time or whatever, each different album, like, and then you lose some fans would be upset, some people love it. Like I feel like if artists gave you everything that you wanted all of the time, you'd be bored and you wouldn't care. I'm not trying to put myself on that pedestal at all whatsoever. It's just I think you have to do what you feel is right for the brand and right for the line and at the time. And obviously there's larger conversations like costing and shipping and all the supply chain delays and stuff like that factor into this as well. But we're trying to do our best to do right by this brand, and doing the same rinse and repeat thing after 7 or 8 waves is not right. So you want to do something new.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think that you're doing some really cool stuff with it. That's kind of a big fun part, is the not knowing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You're keeping people on their toes, which is part, that's the exciting element of it. You don't know what you're getting on these things, and it's adding to what, I think for a large part, people were thinking originally this was like, refreshes of some of the the Playmates original figures, and you're like, no, it's not. It's not entirely that. It's a lot more.
I will freely admit that it certainly started that way, but again, this long into it, like we plan on making Turtles for as long as they'll let us. So we gotta. There's all kinds of directions we need to go and check out and explore. And the best part is, I would love for everyone to buy our figures, but if they're not for you, there's plenty of options out there. There has never been a better time to be a turtle collector in the world.
Absolutely. Let me ask too. I guess this is tied to that. And if we can't answer, you'll let me know. But does this mean that there's certain other things that made it to like prototype stage, as an example, that might be possible now? Like if we're thinking like Warriors of Forgotten Sewer as an example, or some other characters who were in magazine form, like the Uncanny Trio. I know we already kind of have, we have Halocat a little bit with Scratch, but a legitimate, here's Halocat, here's the other. Is that something that is possible?
Yeah, I mean, our license is TMNT, so
full vote.
All of it's on the table. There's obviously like we want to keep it similar to what people are expecting, and then pepper in those curveballs. So I think if we did a whole wave of Guerilla Gorillas, like here's Guerilla Gorilla and Maligna and this and like all these other characters that you're like, that's a turtle character, like the lights would turn off very quickly at the office.
I saw what you did there, by the way. I caught your little
well, I'm only doing it because you text me that name probably 3 times a week. So
well, if I say it enough, it's like Beetlejuice, right? It's gotta happen eventually.
That's true. Yeah. I think that's the first time I've said it. So 2 more.
We'll get you by the end of this interview. So I guess this may not be as exciting for fans who, up until this point didn't know that these were even necessarily on the table and don't necessarily know what the full scope of what we're talking about is here. But from the concept characters, whether you're making them or you're not making them, I'm assuming you have seen quite a few. Do you have a handful that stuck out to you in terms of your favorites?
I mean, yes and no. If I say which ones are my favorites, it might become like a little more obvious. Like I obviously really, really like that old Ace Duck one, with like the cigar and like that. Yeah, I think we even tried to like have him pose like that in some of the renders with like his leg crossed a little bit, right?
Nice.
I watched that interview you did recently, and I had never seen the Gorilla, and I'm like, okay, it's a monkey on roller skates. Like that's pretty incredible. So just give him the monkey machine gun that Guerilla Gorilla comes with. Like it's a party.
I'm thinking full on like old style Darkwing Duck. You know what I'm talking? What's his name? You know what I'm talking about? The guy with the spark. It's no, the one with Spark.
Oh.
So it's like Gorilla. If you put the sparking shoes on there.
Yeah. That could be cool. I know it's not necessarily a concept character, but I've always sort of liked Kirby, the unofficial 5th turtle. But I realized that kind of turned into Slash too a little bit.
Well, kind of depends on the version though. I think there's like 20 different Kirby options out there of what that was. But yeah, no, I mean, there are definitely elements of that were. And if you looked at some of the old advertisements for it, there was a magazine I just saw. It was like an unofficial Turtle Power magazine. And they had an image in there that said like Shredder will meet, they didn't call him Slash. They called him, it sounded like Slash, but it wasn't Slash. And you could tell that like, I think the Toho was originally meant to be something similar to Slash too.
Yeah.
They just kept kind of pushing it down until the next, movie 4 that never happened.
Yeah, I mean, they just reused that body. So
right. My hope is that movie 4 will eventually get made. I'm always hopeful. I realize we're 30 some years out now, but yeah, I mean, but we're that almost that far out with Guerilla Gorilla too. And for much of my life, I never thought I'd see that, which is phenomenal. Like little kid me now is like smile ear to ear.
It's gonna be your smile is gonna wrap around your head once you get it in your hands, because I'm telling you, he's huge.
Oh, I loved your tease on that too, because I could tell that a lot of the people who were seeing that were like, oh yeah, Sgt. Banana's coming now,
We fully knew that was going to be divisive. That plays into the subversion of expectations that we were going for a little bit more.
And the fact is that it's still an incredibly cool character. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool character. And I think that it's more that part of that divisiveness might just be that their expectations were different. Yeah. But I think also if you know something else is coming, that changes a little bit. Yeah. Which were your favorite variant figures from the original toy line? We've seen a lot of those kind of sprinkled in over the waves. And I know that there's folks who are have their favorite character of those variants too. Yeah. But that's a fun thing, is that there was just so many of those kind of variant waves too. Yeah. There's a lot to choose from.
Yeah. I mean, so as a kid, I didn't have that many. I think I got Donnie and stuff was my favorite, and they're all hand-me-downs because I was a little bit younger than the toy line at the time. So my cousins, they stopped playing with turtles, and so I got them, which is a true story. So I didn't really have that many variants. I did think that the purple shirt Ray Fillet was what he looked like for a really long time, and then one day I was like, what is this yellow one? And then my friend was like, that's what the real one looks like. I was like, no, the purple one's the real one.
I was very much the same. Because the earlier shot showed him differently. Yeah.
So and Ray Fillet has always been my favorite. So, yeah. So
it's got the color change in. That's
yeah. I'm never gonna test it. I'm never gonna take that one off the card.
Get yourself one of those shirts that just change colors, and you'll.
I have a loose one here somewhere, but because I got it at a convention not too long ago, and sadly I pulled it out of the bag, and I was like, all right, well, he can't stand. Let me move his legs so he can stand, and he immediately broke. So, I can dip him in water and test the change, but he can't sit on my shelf anywhere.
Dipped with impunity.
R.I.P.
People have, I think they may have a favorite hero and a favorite villain too, so it's for me, I know who my favorite hero is. And it's, I really like Mona Lisa.
Wow. Okay.
I love her design.
You and our research team would have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah. Good. That makes me happy to hear. There's characters that are really near to my heart, like Monty Moose is one of those. Mm-hmm. I'm it was such a fun, cartoony, really Ryan Brown look to it. Yeah. That captured well when it transferred to plastic. And and I liked Dirk Savage in the not liked him because he's an awful person, but liked him in the cartoon, in that he was an interesting one that helped bring in a whole lot of other mutants into that episode. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is him. And this is the closest we're gonna get to him. This is him.
Yeah. Yeah. Ray Fillet is probably my favorite hero that's not a turtle. And my favorite turtle is Donnie, because that's the correct answer. That's just a joke. The correct answer is whichever turtle you relate to and brings you the most joy. Yeah. As long as it's not Leonardo.
I feel like it's largely never Leonardo. That's interesting.
Nah, there are some diehard Leonardo fans, and they're usually cops.
Okay. All right. Well, because it's authority. It's being the leaders. And
favorite hero has always been Ray Fillet, but then I think favorite villain, and this was more of a recent development, I think is Ground Chuck. But I also if anybody's seen my art or just my personal taste and stuff, I love Greek mythology. So if you make a villainous Minotaur, I'm gonna love it.
I'm thinking about the turtles and your passion for characters of the bovine nature.
If you say what I think you're gonna say,
Should I not say it? Is it
No,
something
you can. You can.
You know, you probably know exactly what I'm going to say.
I know exactly what you're going to say, but please. Go ahead.
What are we thinking? Mumesa? Yeah.
You know, it'd be cool. I don't know if it's in discussion right now, but obviously I'd be into it because it's a whole show full of Minotaurs. Mm-hmm. I realize they're not actually Minotaurs; they're just cow people. But
for this conversation, they can be Minotaurs. If it gets it made over there,
I think I'd be way more into it. I think I'd be way more into it if it was Minotaurs of Mumesa. So
that would be cool. I would like that very much.
That's the cooler version of it. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything saying they're not Minotaurs either, right? Maybe there probably is, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about that. But it's I'm going to get a message directly from Ryan just saying, nope, that's not what this is.
Nope. Yeah. No, it'd be cool. I'd be into it. You know, we gotta focus on making all the other 10 billion things that we're working on now. But yeah, we always gotta keep an eye out on the horizon, right?
How far out is the planning stage at this point? I mean, I know I've heard Brian say it's, you know, usually if it's like 2000 or, you know, it's 2022 now, it's like out to like 2025 almost, right?
Yeah, it's usually that far, and it kind of varies brand to brand. But yeah, that's about average for sure.
Is there thoughts towards, like, you know, we've got these movies coming, the Turtles movies, down the way we got Seth Rogen's, we've got what's from Saturday Night Live, what's the other guy's name? You know what I'm talking about? Maybe you don't.
Yeah, no, I know that there's a lot more Turtle movies and content coming. As I understand it, those are additional licenses, so we would have to discuss that with our licensing team and all that. I don't think our deal covers those, just because when we signed our deal, those didn't exist yet. So
got it. Okay, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Is there a character that you think would pose the biggest challenge to getting made in?
I mean, there's obviously characters that you would be difficult, but not impossible. You know, like I know that there are certain characters like PandaCon, the rights are with a different person and stuff like that. Maybe some of those like early concept ones, just because like you're talking about, just because they're so weird and they're unofficial too, you know? You might just have difficulty explaining that to, you know, a licensor or to really, more importantly, to a customer, right?
But the thing with those, I think, is more that this helps to make them canon, right? It has that extra level of like, no, this isn't just something we made up. This is something that was part of the process at one point. Like when they were making the Playmates figures, these characters were part of the, you know, they're part of the stuff.
That was, we were able to do that with Guerilla Gorilla too, which was cool, and they were on board for that. So I think with his success, more of those are on the table for sure. You know, I think doing like a hothead specifically at scale could pose its own challenges, especially with just price increases on tooling and stuff. I mean, like the cost of steel's gone up 40% in like the last 6 months. It's crazy. So as much as like I want to make a hothead like at scale, you know, 20 inches taller, something stupid like that, I also want to keep my job. So I'd rather make a smaller figure.
Could something like that, in the case of Hothead, could it almost be like what HasLab does, where, and I was thinking about this for like Turtle Van, right? We were talking about the Turtle Van before, and about like the price point. I think it's a gorgeous van, and I think like the hesitation for some folks was like the price point. But the thing is there's a lot of moving pieces in there. There's a lot of things, a lot of extra considerations for it. But I wonder if with something like, if it was like crowdsourced in a sense, where it's like you'd get the thing and you'd get, you know, potentially having all these other add-ons with it as you're going along. That might be a really effective way, you know, towards.
And we obviously did that. We did that with Snake Mountain, right? So we have experience with that. The only problem with that is like, if it doesn't fund, then, you know, kind of all that work is kind of down the tubes. And I think at this point, I guess we kind of view ourselves as big enough that we can, if we're confident in a project like a Party Wagon, it's like a no-brainer, like a Thunder Tank, that's a no-brainer, then we'd rather just make that available rather than relying on our customer bases to foot the bill for it up front.
I know we're just talking about how the fact that like price of plastics going up, but like, does that rule out that like the Mega Mutants may have to wait a bit, or is that something that could be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it rules them out completely, but with these rising prices, it definitely makes us reconsider our release schedule and our timing. And well, what's this going to be? And do we wait for prices to go down? Are they ever going to go down? It's all part of larger discussions that, you know, I'm a little bit a part of, but for the most part are above my pay grade.
I guess on the flip side of that, there is a big wealth of folks who are really into the smaller scale figures as well. And it's interesting to me because it's like I had all these when I was getting the figures growing up, but I didn't realize there was such a following for like, there's people who like, it's like, that's their thing, is they love just the smaller characters. Is there something that's ever been talked about in terms of like, you know, almost what was done with the Mousers, right? Where it's like you have a multi-pack of these and, you know, you could add little extra things into that, but it's like you get some of these characters who you may not be, it's maybe unlikely you're getting the bigger characters that might be going with it, but to get the smaller ones, you know, in a small pack.
You mean like a pack of buddies, right?
A pack of buddies.
Yeah.
You said it so much more eloquently than I just rattled on.
I only know how to say that because we have discussed it, and it's, you know, we're a little worried that there's a disconnect to it, but I also think like it's like, well, who's this Larry the Lemur guy? Who does this go for? I've never seen him before, you know. But I personally think our customers are smart enough to know what those would be. It's been discussed. Whether or not it's going to become a real thing remains to be seen.
That would be a lot of fun. But does that mean that we might see some of the Arshowski mini buddies?
Maybe, you know, I gotta convince us to do it in the first place. So
okay, I'm getting ahead of things.
You know, let's get the buddies thing done first, and then decide who's gonna go in the box. Right?
Fair enough. That's gotta be so much fun though. Being a toy guy too, it's just like getting to like eat the cake. You know what I'm saying?
What's crazy to me is that it hasn't gotten old yet, and I don't know if it ever will. Like there's still like something about like, oh man, like I just got this box of test shots from China, or here's the output. Like it's this thing you've been looking at on a screen forever, and then now it's real and I get to hold it, and it's like this moves like you want it to move. And because I'm sure there's a saying here for best laid plans or whatever. I can design it or draw it or whatever, and I have this vision of how it's going to work and how it's going to function. Honestly, until you get tooled plastic, you're kind of like, I hope this works.
Do you have some that you have drafted up that just functionality wise couldn't happen?
Early stuff for sure. I think I had designed one of the mechanisms for like the Snake Mountain trapdoor thing, and it was like, this isn't going to work because it's like catching on this thing, and I was like, oh, okay, then what do we do? And so like the actual one is like it's kind of like it's like a line with a circle, like the screw goes through the circle and then there's the line, and you can like it works either way, and you can like flip it and it drops down. Before that, it was like kind of like a friction fit like hinge where you like move the plastic and then it dropped down, but your thumb would keep hitting it as it was going down. And so that was the first one I did, and so you go, okay, back to the drawing board, and you had to retool it. It was all this expensive stuff, but for the most part, most of what I've worked on works out because there's so many people looking at it, and there's so much discussion ahead of time of like, well, that wouldn't work because of this, and then you have to have this minimum thickness. And so having a team this large is super beneficial for kind of catching those errors before you cut steel on anything.
Keeping each other in check. I guess I have one last turtle question, and then we'll move along to a whole bunch of other ones. There was like a talk a while back about there being a mashup that Super 7 was going to be doing, and that no one would see that coming. And that, in my mind, immediately went to, I wonder if this is going to be Masters and Turtles, because essentially in doing that, you'd have the ability to have Forgotten Sewer to the nth level kind of thing.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that would have been cool. That's the first I've heard of it, of us doing some kind of mashup like that. So kudos to whoever made that rumor up. It's even beyond our knowledge. But I personally, as a guy who's been playing D&D for the last 12 years, would love nothing more than to do Warriors of the Forgotten Sewer. Nice. More than anything, I would love to do D&D Turtles, but just right place, right time.
I'd love to hear that. And I know you knew that I was going to love to hear that. So Thundercats, there was that huge reveal a couple of days ago. That's almost, I mean, to me, as being also a huge Thundercats fan, this was like on par with the idea of Guerilla Gorilla, and that this is like, here's a character we never got. Here's a new toy that fans have wanted this character for a long time and have been asking for this character, and now we're starting to get some of those into the line, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, now that the core, like the core 4 and the villains and stuff are more or less out of the way. I mean, Wave 2 is on the water right now. Sorry about the delay. Obviously, it's just out of our hands. But yeah, now that like those core characters are kind of out of the way, you get to start doing the weirdos, right? Same with the Turtles. So yeah, Mandora is like been one that's always been on our radar, and you know, part of what makes her special is the bike. And you gotta do the bike. Bike's never been made. So
nice. Are there others that are on your radar of characters that you have an affinity for?
Yeah, sure. I have one that's gonna surprise absolutely nobody. But with my connections to Ghost and all things, occult, Mongor is probably my number one want for that line. Because it's just Satan with a scythe. I'd be super into that one.
Do you have a favorite that you got to work on within the first 4 waves as well?
Yeah, I'm really proud of what we were able to do as a team on Scythe as well as Monkeyan. Once folks get Mum-Ra the Ever Living in their hands, I think that's going to be the one that people are going to really gravitate towards. He's huge. He's got this wired cape. The way I describe it is, there's some action figures you can hear,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's one of those.
Well, yeah, I think for me that's like all of Silverhawks too, where I can't even talk about it without hearing the
Exactly. Or like with Mum-Ra, I just hear that like horrible shrieking noise he makes as he like goes and becomes old man, gets all buff and stuff. I always kind of like, my headcanon was that it was like really painful for him to do that, which is why he like screams so much, like kind of like a werewolf transformation, right? If you went from like this little decrepit old dude to like huge and buff and like your bones are all big and your muscles are like shredded, like it probably hurt really bad.
It shows his resolve, right? I mean, to really dislike something that much where
he hates the Thundercats so much he's willing to.
When you were growing up, were you a fan of the Thundercats series? I know that you were more a 90s kid, so this was already like we're talking 80s was Thundercats.
Well, I actually was able to watch Thundercats on the Toonami reruns in the morning before I went to school. They would play episodes of Thundercats and I'd watch it all the time.
Did you watch the newer series too? The one that was like
yeah, and I really like that one too.
I was so frustrated that it ended when it did, because it seemed like that was going to be a really expansive thing.
Yeah.
There were characters in there that were not in the original, that at least that I'm aware of, but that were just fun ones. And it's like to never get to see those is a bummer. I guess jumping back, is there the ability with this line to be able to do any of those other characters that were from the later stuff? Or is that like, is it not the same as like the Turtles where it's like very firmly this is one iteration?
That is sort of above my pay grade. As of now, like I think our focus is to like fulfill those classic characters in kind of that 7-inch scale that we know and love first, and then once we've exhausted every single Thunder Nugget we can pull out of that license, then we'll think about what's next for that brand.
A lot of different Snarf family members there.
That's right. Get ready for Snarf and a scarf.
Everything that's Cat in the Hat style. Shifting to Power Rangers, right? Yeah. Because I know you're a big Power Ranger guy. We're different eras of Power Rangers, but I'm curious to know where we fall into the same place of like some of our favorite monsters are.
Monsters? Yeah. I mean, surprising no one, knowing, just a little bit about me. I really like Minotaur. Minotaur has always stuck with me. I think the more I studied him, for like the figures that we made, like Goldar has really stuck out to me as like just a fantastic design with his armor, and he's like a manticore kind of. Slippery Shark is cool. Commander Crayfish, but that's because he commands like the Dark Rangers, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise he's just like a big shrimp. So, but because he has this army of like evil rangers, that makes him cooler.
Well, I mean, and that's, to me, it feels too, if you got that character in, doing the Dark Rangers it's a fairly easy make too, As
a kid, I always liked Nasty Knight too, just because I thought he was a cool design, right?
Your scope of the monsters that you liked are still like early seasons monsters. I will go back then to the earlier days, because that's in my mind where a lot of the really fun and weird characters were too. Mm-hmm. Was there any monsters that stick out to you that were just like so absurd that to not do one eventually would be like, you're like, oh, this is such a missed opportunity not to do this like truly wacky character?
Oh yeah, there's a couple of them. One of them that really sticks out to me that hasn't gotten its proper due yet is Shell Shock. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a snapping turtle with a stoplight, and then when he fights you, his head turns into a cannon. Just I want what they were smoking back then, because that's ridiculous. Also, I think is his name Mr. Bones or whatever? He's like the dude in like the pilgrim hat with like the bone sword and stuff, right? Like that guy was always really cool. I think he deserves something for sure. I can't remember his name, but he's basically a giant pair of like teeth with like a party hat and like a mullet, and he wears like a battle jacket and like jeans and like Chucks. He's like a mullet party dude, and he's just a giant pair of teeth. But he's like, it's so crazy that I'm like, oh, I kind of want that. And he uses because his whole thing is he like eats people, so he uses the same fork and knife that Pudgy Pig had as well.
There's a lot of props.
Yeah. But I always like that guy.
I feel like with a lot of the names are right on the nose, you know. So it's like Eye Guy is an example, right? It's like, wonder what this guy's name is, Mr. Bones. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if his name was like Mr. Teeth or Dr. Teeth, which Muppet segue. What I'll say about Shell Shock, by the way, is like that's a character that seems like it would have multi-purpose, right? And that like when that came out, I was like, oh, this is a crossover with Turtles without having a crossover with Turtles, you know.
Yeah, kind of. People with keen eyes will probably notice that I put a reference to Shell Shock in the Yellow Ranger package, where she comes with the Deandra flowers, which is the only way you can cure his like freeze ray thing.
Oh, I like it. That's a fun little reference put in there.
I try to put them in there where I can.
Do you have a favorite Ranger?
Yeah, it's always been White Ranger. When I was a kid, it was White Ranger. I had all of his Zords. I had all of his figures. I still really like White Ranger. I think there was a good chunk there where I really liked Billy as well, because I always thought it like my memory of him as a kid was that he was like way more jacked than he actually was, and I always thought it was funny that they like put glasses on a bodybuilder and called him a nerd, but he's not a bodybuilder, he's like a pretty normal looking. But rewatching it again for all this research I've had to do and stuff, I've watched it 3 or 4 times all the way through now, like within the last year. I think Zach is my favorite, or just Black Ranger, just the confidence. Zach obviously with, you know, the hip hop keto and like having fun and like making things a party and stuff, but then like when it shifts over to Adam, there's an argument to be said on that some people may or may not disagree with, but like I think Adam is probably the best fighter perhaps in all of Power Rangers so far, which is why I kept bringing him back. Everybody likes to talk about Jason and how awesome he was in fighting. He was really good. I really like it too, but like he goes from Black Power Rangers to Zeo Green, and then he comes back as Black Ranger, I think in Lost Galaxy or something. I'm probably messing that up horribly, but like when he's got like the ponytail and whatnot, I think something about Black Ranger. Also, every shirt I ever wear is black too, so that's probably my preferences a little bit. What about you? I realize you keep asking me the questions.
Oh, I liked Kimberly. I like the Pink Ranger.
We all like Kimberly.
It's a little, I mean, yes.
That doesn't invalidate your choice, but we all like Kimberly.
Yeah. I mean, I like Tommy. I really like Billy. Billy to me felt like the Donatello of the group.
He is. He's 100% the Donnie of the group, which is probably why I like him a lot too.
Yeah, exactly. And Donnie was always my, you know, was my go-to for Turtles too. It was like between when we were talking before about like who your favorite turtle is. It's similar with Power Rangers, right? It's like where your mind's at the time. And I identified differently with different turtles throughout my life, right? Again, never Leo, but
right answer. There you go.
Yeah, but like as an adult, I identify more with Raph. But as a kid, I was like, you know, Mikey and Donnie all the way. You know, party dude and be like make all sorts of cool contraptions. Heck yeah, you know.
Yeah, I think the only you know, not to make the Leo fans mad or anything, but you know, we're having fun here. I think the only incorrect answer for what turtle is your favorite is the one that likes pizza.
I like it. It's very magnanimous.
If someone answers that, like, you know that you can't talk to them. So
I felt bad for, you know, and I felt bad for myself too, because I am lactose intolerant, but it's never stopped me from eating pizza, right? And I think maybe I persevered through it because
there's a will, there's a way.
I'm like, turtles do it, I gotta do it.
Turtles eat pizza, I eat pizza.
Okay, so 2 questions on Mighty Morphin, and then we can move to Toho. One thing I've always wanted, and I don't know if this is something that's ever been discussed there, has there ever been a Bulk and Skull figure?
I do not think so. To my knowledge, anything I've seen is all customs.
Right.
But I 100% do want to do Bulk and Skull. Again, it's just right place, right time.
Will it come with a recently been pied in the face?
I would be into that. I kind of am wondering, is there a battle damage version? That's the food fight version?
Well, it seems like there is always, for as many times as you see them not like full of just covered in stuff, there would also the equivalent of, you know, you're going to see them covered in mud or kai or any sort of liquidy substance, you know.
Poor dudes. I think there's also multiple options too. I think there's like an episode where they like dress up in like their superhero outfits. There's their regular outfits where like Bulk's got the pink shirt and the leather jacket, and Skull's got the beret, right? There's also later season stuff where they're cops too.
I remember that. There was also like a PSA kind of thing too, right?
Yeah.
That was their
so lots of options, no shortage of Bulk and Skull product we could be making. So it's definitely on my radar.
The announcement of the only Bulk and Skull line of
not an announcement, it's just on my radar. Very different.
Zordon in scale, right? If
like in the tube?
Like in the tube with an Alpha 5, is there anything in the horizon on there like that we have with Turtles where we might start seeing, like, I could, you know, like in my mind, it's like you'd have, this could be part of a play set, right? Is that something that could happen?
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Again, it's just the right place, the right time, and the right product. You know, I think that there's a wealth of cool stuff we could be making, especially playset stuff. You know, the command center, having worked on Snake Mountain, what if there was a moon palace that was like Snake Mountain? Things like that. Or, you know, here's the youth center, right?
Right. Yeah, and that was a staple too. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, and I don't think there's any shortage of possibilities. It's just, again, we got to find the right time, the right, you know, what are the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion, right? So,
could it be something similar to like what's happening in the Silverhawks? How there was like a throne for Monstar. There's a very familiar looking throne that, you know, that Zed and Rita used too. Is that something that
definitely a possibility. Again, we just got to make sure it's with the right character. Like, it'd be weird if we like did the throne and Zed's not in the wave or something, you know?
Well, that would make sense, right? Yeah. All right. So, and this is the main takeaway here, is that we all grew up with this stuff.
Yeah.
And we know these lines inside out because these are our jam.
Yeah.
And it's like the people that grew up with the cartoons and grew up with the shows are now doing the things.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like all the things we wanted to see as a kid, we now get to see it.
The inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And you can especially at Super 7, you see that all over the place, right? And that's kind of like the motto there is like, we didn't see the things we wanted, so we're making them, you know?
Yeah.
And it shows.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So I just call it as I see it. Everyone say I'm gonna take a sip.
All good. Yeah, you've been going with no water this whole time. That's very impressive. I get super dried out way too quick.
Bourbon, straight up bourbon.
Straight, it's pure vodka. Yeah.
That's Mr. Geeky needs his geeky juice. Okay, so speaking of monsters and speaking of kaiju, why don't we talk a little bit about Toho? Because you know,
I'll tell you what I can.
The first questions I have is around the time that Silverhawks Ultimates was announced. There was also the announcement that there was going to be Godzilla Ultimates.
Yeah.
And we've seen a ton of the reaction stuff, a ton of the other ways in which we are going to be seeing many of these monsters. But are there some that you know that you want to get to in that ultimate? Are there some that you're chomping at the bit to get to in terms of not necessarily? I mean, Godzilla, yes, but also some of just some of his adversaries. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we have full range to everything that Toho has. So Rodan's always been my favorite personally. So I want to do all the versions of Rodan. The original one with, like, I call them the football arms, and Fire Rodan from the 90s. Maybe even the legendary one, that'd be cool, but I think it's a separate license. The other thing I'm really excited for about that is, like, what would an ultimate King Ghidorah look like? Obviously, I know it's going to look like King Ghidorah. That's, like, kind of, it's a figure of speech, but I'm interested, like, to take on that challenge of, like, how do I articulate it? Like, how do we make sure it pulls out of the mold right? Like, how do I make sure I hit cost while also still doing this awesome cool thing? So that one I'm really excited about, as well as Destoroyah, just because he would be, again, there's that term, irresponsibly large, right?
Beautifully large. Yeah. What about with the King of the Monsters, like the comics? And we were talking a little bit about that before too. Could we see some of that in this as well, I'd imagine?
I think possibly, yeah. All of our Godzilla stuff is planned so far out already. Like we're covered till like 2063 at this point.
That's awesome.
So I would love to do that stuff, whether that's a card back special for reaction, or a full repaint for an ultimate or something like that, or just a cool shirt or whatever. Like I'd love to be able to incorporate any of that into some of our product lines, just because like I had mentioned earlier in the interview here, is that I kind of view that as sort of my origin story a little bit for art and comics and just being a nerd altogether.
Well, I mean, there was so many lesser known characters from that too, which is it doesn't mean that they weren't still freaking awesome, right? Yeah. There was like a Venus flytrap monster, if you remember. It was, I don't know if that was
I remember that one, and I remember saying like, why does Biolante look like that? The other one that always stuck with me, and I feel like I'm probably the only one who cares, was this giant bat called Bagora, I think, who's like all red, and he's these huge wings and this long tail, and he really messed up Godzilla in the comics. And there's like another, I don't think it's Mecha Godzilla, but it's something else. There's like another mech that kind of looks like Mecha Godzilla, and it's like all gold too.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do. Yeah. My instinct wants to say Goldar. It's not Goldar.
No.
But I mean,
it looked like that would be cool too.
Yeah, aesthetically, I think that would be a really fun one to see hanging on the shelf. Like, do you remember Beta Beast? Or there's Godzilla versus Kong, but there's also Uncanny Kong.
Yeah, I know that one. I think King Kong specifically is kind of like a hard one to touch, just because it's like his licensing is so crazy, and it's with Universal separately. So I don't think we can touch Kong at all, or at least not right now. So
okay.
But there's a Mechanicon poster in the office. We're very well aware of Mechanicon, because as much as I love Godzilla and the brands, Flynn has been loving it for 10 times longer. So when the day we got the Godzilla license, he like sent me an email. I was like, here's the entire line plan, have fun. I'm like, great, perfect. It takes my guesswork out. I mean, because it's so cool to be able to work for a guy like that. He's been wanting to make Godzilla toys as like longer than I've been alive. It's really rad.
Well, and we're all lucky for him having that passion, because we all get to play with it. It's phenomenal.
Definitely.
There's just such a flurry of new products that have been teased over the last, I want to say, month or so. Toy Fair was like, holy moly! We had right there. There's Parks and Rec. There was McBane. There was, we were seeing a lot of the Ghost stuff there with that. I mean, there's just so many different new things. We got the Disney Ultimates, the new wave of that. Is there any of the stuff that has been shown recently that you're most excited to see? That I guess. How it's been received, and B, that you personally are really excited to
I mean, I'm excited about all of it. I'm really excited about Parks and Rec. That's the show I've watched like more times through than any other show. Like at this point I've legit lost count, and I was able to do like a lot of designing and line planning and that kind of stuff, because I love that show so much, and it my girl loves it too, so it's cool to be able to like, because a lot of it's like, oh, what's this like Power Ranger, like I don't understand what this monster is, or a common question I get from my in-laws is like, can't Kyle design something like pretty or cute or whatever? And so like, you like Parks and Rec, I can give this to you and you understand what it is, right? So that's exciting. I finally have that. But then I'm also really stoked on Critical Role, just being the tabletop player that I am. I think that one's going to really surprise people with some of the stuff we're doing, like with the reaction format and some of the characters we get to do. That one I'm really excited for, personally.
I'm also a big D&D guy. And I've been enjoying the Critical Role. What I think I like about this too is that you get to dive into the campaign-y kind of stuff, right? You get to mess around with how they get to be represented there. Is there like certain iterations of that is like, okay, now we get to do this.
Yeah, like oh, now there's this character, or like, oh, now we get to get into like this next campaign, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean we're starting with a certain campaign, and then I'll be excited to get into the next one, because like obviously some people have, everyone's connection to Critical Role is a little bit different, right? You started with Vox Machina or Mighty Nine, or now with Bell's Hells. We're likely to get to all of them at this point. There's plans for all kinds of cool stuff with them. Yeah, there's definitely some points where it's like, oh, we're gonna do this one now, and it's like, that's not something I expected us to be able to do. There are certain characters who, you know, never touch the ground, right? And so it's like, how do you make a figure for that? So there's some interesting like design choices and stuff like that. And like, think about it this way, like a lot of them they're like halflings or gnomes or whatever. It's like, okay, like, so your regular reaction figure is this, like, what is a hobbit or a halfling? That is this, like, it's all these cool design challenges, and it's like it's able to keep like that form factor fresh. And it's cool to be able to like take these modern properties and pull them back into these retro toy styles, especially with characters like Critical Role, because it just reminds me of like those AD&D toys, you know, and being able to like, I feel like going full circle and like bringing these modern brands of Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop into some of those old retro toy brands. Like, there's a synergy to it. It almost feels effortless a little bit.
Absolutely. Has there been talk about trying to bring in some of those like the other D&D components?
We're always talking about D&D in some way, shape, or form, whether it's AD&D or regular or something. Again, right place, right time, who knows?
Fair enough. What is the determination in terms of whether something gets an Ultimates and a reaction, or if it's, you know, there's some lines, like I think of like Pee-wee, right, as an example there, where it's like, that is, when I saw that line released, I immediately swooped in, picked up everything, and it was like one of my son's favorite shows, one of my favorite shows, right? So that's one that I feel like it's like, that also lends well to like, I'd love to see a giant cherry. I'd love to, you know, like, what is the determiner in terms of like, if it stays in that reaction form, or if it also like goes to the larger?
Yeah, you're probably going to kill me for this answer, but it's all licensing. It's depends on what our deals are, what our agreements are, what's in the contract, and again, all of that is way above my pay grade. I just I just make the things look pretty, you know. Well,
and you do a great job of that.
It's a team effort.
That's not something to downplay. That's a big deal.
It's a team effort for sure.
McBane was one that just like out of left field, right? Yeah. I knew Simpsons, but an entire McBane line, like, never saw that coming. Like, but it's really excited that it is. And that's one of those where like my son really likes Simpsons, so that's Parks and Rec for you. That was like the connector. For me, it's like, I now have something to talk to you about that you're excited about too. Do you know is this a one-off kind of thing, or might we see like other, where it makes sense, other like spin-offy kind of things from The Simpsons, like a Radioactive Man line, if that's the word, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all on the table. I will freely admit that I do not work on Simpsons at all, but I know that there's a very long and extensive line plan for Simpsons coming.
First of all, that is really fun to hear, because there's so many great characters from that line, and like Super7 is just doing such a bang up job. Like, I love the first wave, and the second wave was just like, holy moly, they're getting some of these deeper cut characters that really were fun to see. I was going to ask too, with the Disney Ultimates, are you a big Disney fan? Are there characters throughout Disney, very vague throughout Disney, that you are be like, that would be fun to see that someday?
Yeah, again, I do not work on Disney, but I mean, who doesn't like Disney? Every person likes Disney. When I was a kid, like Hercules was my favorite for sure. I still love that movie because of Greek mythology stuff. Like, I no joke had a dream about what an ultimate Hades would look like in hand one time. I woke up like with a single tear of joy. I also really like Tarzan, but again, that's just Gorilla. I like my Gorilla figure, like scratches that edge. It's probably fine. But we should make Tarzan. That'd be cool. Incredibles, of course, and then, you know, deep cuts. I think Black Cauldron stuff would be cool. We could do that. But you know, again, it's not in my purview, any of this Disney stuff. I'm just a fan of what we're doing.
Yeah. Another one of the things that kind of I got super excited about when I saw this was the Dr. Teeth. So you're going to be doing some Muppets, or Super 7 is going to be, whether you're on that one, I don't, you know.
I am not, but I'm going to pass all these compliments to these wonderful designers who work on our product.
There is excitement there for me too, because there's such a wealth of opportunities and possibilities that like my mind is kind of reeling about. Like, I know that we're starting with the, you know, Electric Mayhem, but there is like so many different places. And I know with Super 7 involved, like the amount of thought and amount of beauty to these figures, I'm very excited for what these will look like.
Yeah. You should be. They look great.
Does this go beyond other Jim Henson stuff, or is this primarily just, where does it end with Muppets?
I'm gonna quote Flynn. Let's enjoy the stuff we have now. Let's worry about what's coming in the future after we have the stuff that's out now. Let's get this off of a boat before we start talking about other Henson stuff. All right.
I like that answer too. So the Ghost Ultimates and Papa Emeritus the second, right? I loved that it had the ability to toggle between the two versions. You can tell the love that went behind that. You can tell the thought and the knowledge that went behind that. I imagine that this one in particular was really personal for you and was fun when you were thinking about this. Were there pieces about this that you had to scale back in terms of what you wanted to, like all the things you wanted to do for it?
This one, no. I think there was a bigger ask in wave one, because I was like, I want to make an all new body. I want 2 robes. I want all this. I want real chains on his thuribles and a mic stand. And it's a miracle it happened. People who got that first one kind of smartly noticed that, like, oh, like he's got just a suited body underneath. This kind of looks like this other thing. And they were correct. We sculpted them both and designed them both at the same time so that you have your built-in one ready to go for wave 2. With that, I didn't really have to pull back on anything, because like there was a plan for that already. I mean, obviously I want to go crazy and like make ghouls and, you know, do like drum kits and stages and lights and all that stuff. So I can't go that crazy.
What's fun with that though is that, like, especially like now we got Punker Don, right?
Yeah.
Is there are so many fun heavy metal and rocker characters that we could play around with, where you can mix and match from all across the lines to make your own band the way you want it to be. You know?
I mean, it's kind of insane to me that on the same shelf I have a Papa Emeritus and a King Diamond figure. One on the same shelf. 2 that I got to work on them, like, is even crazy.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, the kind of stuff that you are helping to bring into the zeitgeist of toydom is a really incredible thing, you know, because this is, like we said before, you know, this is such a fun time to be a collector. This is such a fun, the options there are so wide, you know.
Definitely.
So right now we're going to introduce a brand new section into the show. We've asked our geeky fans to submit their questions, and we're going to open them today, and we're going to ask them to our very special guest.
Yeah, let's do it.
Here. So let's open up our first one. This one comes from Mikey Wadland from Rockhopper Comics and Games in Minnesota. What's the difference between Guerilla Gorilla and Sgt Bananas? And why did they go with, we kind of answered this, didn't we? And why did they go with Gorilla designs rather than bananas? Follow up, now that we have a Gorilla buck, does this make the possibility of a Sgt Bananas and Larry the Lemur down the road closer to reality as well? Yeah, we
100% covered all of that.
Yeah, that one is covered. So Mikey Wadland, your question has been answered.
Rewind. Go back a little while and find it.
This next question comes from Scott Lamont from Dave Wheeler's Consortium of Jackasses. And he asks, is Super 7 planning to do the whole Rock and Roll Turtles line?
I would love to. If you know anything about me and my own personal tastes, rock and roll and turtles kind of, you know, is peanut butter and jelly to me. So I would love to. Can't confirm or deny anything at this point. So
awesome. The next question asks, and is from Robert from the UK, asks, are there any characters from the original line that are off limits? And now that we have Samurai Leo, how long will we have to wait to see characters like PandaCon or Shogun Shoei to display alongside him? And we kind of answered the PandaCon one earlier.
A little bit, yeah. It all just depends on licensing, and as far as I understand, there's really nothing necessarily off limits at this time. So
awesome. 2 more questions here for you. The next one asks, and it's from Alice A from New York. With conventions looking like they will be in person again soon, are you looking at doing any new con exclusives for San Diego Comic-Con, or would those set around the convention stay being available for sale online through pre-orders?
I think we are thinking about that, just because we realize that there are a lot of people who are returning to normalcy. I think we're still a little bit wary about attending conventions and stuff, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't participate like we have been for the past couple of years, our stay-at-home cons and stuff, right? Yeah, I mean, we always plan to have something around that time. We never stopped having them. We wouldn't be able to deliver it to you. We wouldn't be able to hand it to you at a convention, right?
Mm-hmm. There is your answer, Alice A.
All right, I feel like I dropped the ball on all those, but
no, that's your answer, and you're giving great answers. This is the question, and now there's the answer. It's a very
whether they like it or not. Yeah.
This last question is from Gilly D from Florida, and he asks, any chance we'll be seeing figures from any additional anthropomorphic facing licenses from Super 7? I think Super 7 would knock these properties like Battletoads, Street Sharks, Biker Mice from Mars, SWAT Cats out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance. So if we think there's an opportunity and there's a demand for that kind of stuff, like, we'd love to do it. So Biker Mice from Mars was a favorite of mine as a kid too. I had the bikes where you could like pull the ripcord and there was the lights in the wheel, right? I had all that. So that'd be really, really cool. The only problem with that is you got to make a bike, and that gets expensive. So as people are seeing now with Mandora. So if this one does well, maybe it's like, okay, well, this one went really well, so let's do a whole line of these Biker Mice from Mars. So never say never. Again, just right place, right time. Got to find that demand and the right opportunity.
Right on. Thank you again for coming on to the show. This was such a blast to have you here. I want to thank our very special guest,
Wlodyga. There you go.
I also want to give you the opportunity, if there's other places that you'd like fans discovering about Super 7 and about you, where else can they find you on all the different social media? Where would be a good place to start?
Yeah, I mean, super7.com obviously is the #1 source. Super 7 on Instagram. I'm also on Instagram. I'm not going to plug that here because we're all about Super 7 today, but you can find me if you look hard enough. So just keep it all tuned to Super 7. This is, we're, as I always say when I do these interviews, we're just getting started. There's so much more stuff coming. So,
heck yeah. So excited. And it was so much fun getting to geek out with you for a bit here.
Yeah, man. Thank you again for the opportunity. It was really cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, make sure to sub up, give the video a like, and share with anyone you know who appreciates these types of videos. Also, make sure to check out the description for additional links and additional creators that are doing some really cool stuff in the world of TMNT, and leave us some expanded content we think you'll also probably enjoy quite a bit. We realize you could have been anywhere, and you chose to nerd out with us, and we appreciate that. So, as always, I am Mr. Geeky, and until next we speaky, keep it geeky. I feel like by the end of this episode, it's just gonna be like, I like toys, and that's it.
Yeah, perfect. The message is on brand.